For a solid century, the death of King Tutankhamun has been this incredible puzzle, a mix of myth, murder, and straight-up mystery. It's a story that kicks off with one of the biggest archaeological discoveries ever and spins out into decades of just wild speculation. So let's get into it and see if we can unravel what really happened using the science we have today.
So this is the big question, right? The one that's kept people guessing for so long. Was this young pharaoh taken down by some ancient curse meant to guard his tomb? Or was he the victim of a dark conspiracy at court, silenced by someone who wanted his throne? For the longest time, those really felt like the only two options.
To really understand how we finally cracked this case, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning, back to the exact moment the modern world got its first glimpse inside the Boy King's tomb.
Okay, so picture this, it's 1922. Howard Carter and his team finally breached Tutankhamun's tomb, and it is a discovery unlike any other. So many other tombs have been looted, but this one, it was almost perfectly intact, just stuffed with thousands of unbelievable treasures. It was, no question, the biggest archaeological find of its day, and it made King Tut a household name literally overnight.
But that celebration, well, it didn't last very long, because soon after the tomb was opened, something really strange and kind of spooky started to happen. One by one, people connected to the dig began to die, some in pretty weird ways, and this led the public to a very, very dramatic conclusion.
And that conclusion, of course, was the legendary Curse of the Pharaohs, this idea that if you dared to disturb the king's eternal rest, you were doomed to meet a quick and terrible fate.
The poster child for this whole curse thing was Lord Carnarvon, the man who paid for the whole expedition. He died just a couple of months after setting foot in the tomb. You can imagine the newspapers back in the 1920s. They were hungry for a sensational story, and they absolutely went wild with this. This one death was all it took to turn an old piece of folklore into what a lot of people thought was a terrifying new reality.
But here's where you see the huge difference between the spooky myth and, well, the much more boring reality. I mean, a pharaoh's curse is a great story, but the medical facts tell us something else. Lord Carnarvon had accidentally nicked a mosquito bite while shaving. It got badly infected, and because his health was already pretty poor, his body just couldn't fight it off. So it was that, not some ancient magic, that sealed his fate.
Okay, so with the curse theory looking pretty shaky, people started to look for more human explanation. If it wasn't a ghost, maybe it was good old-fashioned cold-blooded murder.
Now, the first real shred of evidence for a murder plot came in the 1960s. They x-rayed the mummy for the first time, and the images showed these loose bone fragments inside his skull, plus what looked like a missing piece. To a lot of people, that screamed fatal blow to the head. Suddenly, the murder theory seemed very, very real.
But, a good theory needs to hold up to scrutiny. So you start with the observation. Bone fragments in the skull. The hypothesis? He was murdered. Makes sense. But then, much later, with better technology, we got a new finding that damage almost certainly happened after he died, probably during the whole mummification process. And just like that, the main piece of evidence for a blow to the head, it just crumbled.
And yet, the assassination idea stuck around for a long, long time. And it's kind of easy to see why. I mean, Tutankhamun was just a teenager when he died. Imagine being a boy king, surrounded by powerful advisors, generals, all kinds of political rivals. The motive for murder was definitely there, even if the proof wasn't.
So for decades, the case was just stuck, right? It was caught between this debunked curse and a murder theory with no real evidence. And that's pretty much where things stayed, until modern technology finally gave us a way to look at this whole thing with fresh eyes, revealing a totally new story about the pharaoh's last days.
I mean, just look at this timeline. The investigation itself has been this incredible journey. From the moment they found the tomb, it took more than 80 years for our tech to get good enough to really start solving the puzzle. The big turning points? Those CT scans in 2005, and then the DNA tests that came a few years after.
The real game changer here was the CT scan. The best way to think about it is like a superpowered 3D X-ray. It takes thousands of little image slices and stacks them together to create this incredibly detailed virtual model of the pharaoh's body. For the very first time, scientists could do a kind of virtual autopsy, looking at every single bone without ever having to unwrap the fragile mummy.
And what they found, wow, it changed everything. The scan showed zero evidence of any kind of blow to the head,
But what they did find was something nobody expected. A really bad, complex fracture in his left leg, just above his knee. We're talking a bone-shattering kind of break. And the scan showed clear signs of a massive infection that followed.
But the broken leg, that wasn't even the whole picture. A few years after that, DNA analysis gave us the last critical piece of the puzzle. It showed that Tutankhamun was suffering from several strains of malaria, and it was a serious chronic infection. So his body was already fighting a major battle every single day.
So, with all this new scientific evidence on the table, the old theories about a curse or a murder plot, they were finally put to bed. The evidence was now pointing to a much more tragic and, honestly, a much more human story.
In the end, it wasn't one single thing that killed him. It was a perfect storm of medical disasters. First, Tutankhamun suffers this horrible leg fracture, which probably broke the skin. That wound then gets badly infected. Meanwhile, his body, which was already worn down by chronic malaria, just didn't have the strength to fight back. His immune system was completely overwhelmed.
So, after 100 years, we find out the mystery of King Tut's death wasn't some exciting whodunit full of curses and assassins. It was the really sad story of a young man who had a terrible accident and died from complications that his sick body just couldn't handle. In the end, it was science, not speculation, that finally gave us the real answer.
And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we could solve this iconic 3,000-year-old mystery, what other secrets are buried out there in the past, just waiting for the right piece of future tech to bring them into the light?